We've got Deneen Borelli here, Moody's Capital Markets Chief Economist, John Lonski, Democratic Strategist, Max Burns. Now, a quick peek at the corner of Wall and Broad. I do want to get your guys' thoughts on that. So far, our markets are dealing with it. But one thing that's interesting, John, is we're dealing with it because we like maybe the trade blinking on the part of the president, maybe the trade overture on his part to help the Chinese, or at least to give them something to ameliorate this Hong Kong mess. Who knows? But it did put off tariffs on some of these Chinese imports that were going to go into effect. You could also, September 1. What do you think? Because the market's like that.
Yeah, you could also say Trump is listening to the markets. You know, he wants to keep this economy growing, so he's backing off a bit on the trade front. And of course, that's good news for U.S. equities.
What do you think of that, Deneen? Listen to the markets. That could be a good or bad thing, but what do you think?
I think it's a good thing. The market did respond because of the announcement coming from the Trump administration that the additional tariffs have been suspended. And so really, this goes back to the president looking out for the forgotten men and women in America, because China has been getting away with many, many years of cheating and stealing and lying, and now it is time to call them out on their actions.
All right, but he was the one that made this overture, maybe for perfectly sound and valid reasons. You were the one, John, who said he's looking at the markets because the markets were getting worried.
Worried about the sustainability of the current economic recovery. He's got to keep that unemployment rate moving lower. If he
had to know that would happen when he suggested these tariffs in the first place.
Well, maybe he thought that the response would have been more muted for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But when you had, major banks coming out with upwardly revised forecasts of recession risk, you had that drop in Treasury bond yields. You had, my goodness, yesterday, for a while, the 30-year Treasury bond yield was just under the federal funds rate. That's ridiculous. That shows a lot of fright in the financial markets as far as the outlook for the U.S. economy.
And globally, rates have been declining, Max. I'm wondering, Democratic candidates, maybe with the exception of Kamala Harris, have been largely silent on this issue. I think she was the one that came forward to say in the last debate, the Fed had to cut rates to sort of clean up after the president. I'm paraphrasing. And no doubt the Fed might have to do that again and again and again. And I'm wondering how this does play out politically, because there are a lot of Democratic voters who like what the president's doing with China. What do you think?
I think there are very few people in the country that seem to like what the president's doing on trade. Certainly not the farmers who are seeing their contracts go away. Where even
I'm talking union workers.
Well, this is not just a farmer's issue. This is construction. This is materials for industrial work.
Then why don't they speak out more?
They have. There have been a flood of stories just this week on farmers, on construction workers saying their contracts are gone. And these are contracts that they've worked on for 10, 20, 30 years to build trust. Those aren't going to come back even when the trade war stops.
Today. I'm not disputing the fact that they're concerned at all, but I think a lot of the candidates themselves get concerned about maybe supporting the farmers, but being very leery of ticking off union voters who increasingly do like this president. Are you worried about that?
Well, the numbers in Pennsylvania don't seem to bear that out. He's underwater there by 15 points. So this is much more, I think, damage control than anything else for the president.
What do you think?
But in regards to the union workers, you got to look at how Democrats want to implement the Green New Deal. What is that going to do to jobs, especially to union jobs, and raise energy prices and all the other things that they want to do to really disrupt our way of life? And that would be more onerous on Americans, on hardworking Americans, and especially the union workers. Joe Biden, the coal fight. I mean, come on. He said years ago, no more coal in USA. And he is still trying to bring back that mantra now. He has a war against coal again from the previous administration.
I would go ahead and add, too, that the Democrats, with this issue on trading with China, intellectual property theft, said nothing about it. They didn't seem to care much that these communities in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Ohio, and where else, manufacturing areas down south, were being clobbered by the movement of production facilities from the United States to China. That should have been an issue. Maybe that had to happen eventually, but you can't ignore it.
But to Max's point, in Iowa, when they were there for the state fair and all of that stuff, the farmer thing and the impact there was very pronounced. That was a big issue. And now, things are improving on that front. Well, almost every sector and individual, we're going to be rifling through a lot of these folks, from retail doing well, all Dow 30 stocks are up for the time being. But when it comes to a lot of the issues near and dear to farmers, they're not doing too well. A lot of corn futures down, soybean futures down, wheat, barley down. So if there's optimism, to your point, about this getting resolved, funny way of showing it.
Yeah, and we can talk about what the Green New Deal might do to the economy, or we can talk about what President Trump's trade schizophrenia is doing now. The bond yields aren't going down because I'm buying bonds. That's institutional investors
I thought you were.
fleeing out of the market for fear of a recession. We have the smart money and the large investors already starting to cover their positions for fear of what might happen.
But
That's
all
not,
that money is coming here for the time being. Right now, we are a safe place to park. Do you buy that?
Well, that's definitely the case. And as the Federal Reserve goes ahead and cuts interest rates, that reduces the cost of hedging for these foreign investors. And it makes U.S. bonds all the more attractive relative to bonds from Germany that now have a minus 0.5% interest rate. Bonds even from the UK with Brexit. You know what the interest rate there is on a 10-year bond? 0.5%. And we're still way up there at nearly 1.7%. I think there's a lot of room for U.S. Treasury yields to move lower. I think we'll be in a range eventually, 1.25.
I mean, we don't have a lot more to go.
Yeah, well, hey, it's 1.25, 1.5 is lower than where we are today. I think there's a very good chance that at some point in 2019, we are going to set a new low for the 10-year Treasury yield going back maybe 50 or, no, excuse me, longer than that, going back 60, 70 years.
Really?
Yes.
Politically, the president, you know, is trying to say he did what he did today to help American consumers so they won't be shocked, you know, right before the holidays with these, you know, sticker increases, which is the first time I've heard him quasi-acknowledge that there is a bill for Americans to pay as a result of tariffs. He has said that we've dodged that bullet because China's paying. Of course, the truth is that U.S. entities pay them. It's how much they get passed along to consumers. What do you think of that, whether the president's pivoting on this issue?
Well, I think he's really putting the facts out there, and I think that is what his supporters like the most. First of all, who in America, how many knew that this issue with China was so bad? Who knew that it was $500 billion a year that we were losing because of China lying and cheating and stealing the intellectual property and all of that?
But we're also getting a lot of investment here, too.
Sure, that's right, because it's
So
another aspect
that,
of...
right?
I'm sorry?
You lose that if China all of a sudden is at odds.
All right, but the thing is, hopefully this is a short-term
Hopefully. It's been going on a year and a half.
That's true.
Yeah.
But how many years has it been going on? They've been stealing it from Americans.
Well, you know, I think, you know, from the political perspective here, I think the important thing to note, too, is, as I stated earlier, is the Democratic Party didn't seem to care all that much that these people were being left behind in Middle America, the Middle West, whatever. And they didn't really come up with ideas such as training programs and so on. Take money from other programs and push it into these areas so that these people could reestablish that standard of living that they enjoyed for so long.
Well, Republicans
and the Democratic
were hardly
Party,
fiscal stewards.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but I mean,
it's like putting me in charge of the Ponderosa buffet,
yeah,
not the
but
wisest.
yes.